By this time next week, South Africans will have entered level 3 of the national lockdown, and grade 7 and 12s will be returning to school. It's a big day next week. President Cyril Ramphosa, in his address last night, said that there will be more freedom of movement for exercise and those needing to return to work. Although alcohol will be allowed to be sold, shebeens, restaurant bars, professional sporting events and the airline industry, as well as accommodation and the sale of tobacco, will either not be allowed at all or operate, a little bit, or not be able to operate as normal, though. In addition, ministers of their various departments will still update on specifics of what will and will not be allowed. Some are saying that we are not ready for level 3. Others are welcoming it. Well, let's get a little bit of analysis now. We've got a political analyst, Ralph Mathekga, who's joining us this morning. Ralph, good to see you. What did you make of the announcement last night?
Good morning, Leon, and happy Africa Day to all your viewers at home.
And to you as well.
I think that, thank you. I think people are much more excited. There's been a great deal of anxiety around this, where there's been calls by different groups that we cannot continue with this current system. We can't continue at this level longer. We have to go to level 3. So I think business will be happy to see what is happening. I think, however, that a lot of work still have to be done. And I think that the greatest test about our readiness to win ourselves out of this situation and learn to live with this virus will be in terms of education, the opening of the schooling. I think that is where a lot of work needs to go into. And I think that we will see how the plan will come into place. So it's people, I think, in anticipation, we're expecting this, and it's all about people taking responsibility as well and seeing how they exist with this virus.
Yeah, I suppose, the reality is that we need life to resume, but we need to act responsibly, and we've got to, take some responsibility now into our own hands, because we've got to listen to what it is. I mean, has the message been made strong enough, in your opinion, though, that we haven't seen the full effect of this virus? Now it's coming, because we've been hiding away and keeping away from everybody and doing everything we've been told to do with these lockdowns. But now, as we start seeing South Africa open up, that's when these numbers are going to rise. Do you think the message is strong enough?
I think government's position has changed, Leanne. I think government is coming forthright, revealing to people the projected mortality out of this. I mean, it is last week that we started seeing information about the model coming out, where government has been saying to people that they are expecting a certain amount of death at a particular point in time. I think that is the beginning of a responsible conversation with citizens, to say to the people that this is what we are faced with, and this is why the measures that have been taken need to be understood. So the message is coming out, and the President Ramaphosa, I think, pointed out very carefully that the worst is yet to come, but it's all in our hands. And I think in that way, the idea of social compact, telling people everything they need to know about this so that they can determine what they need to put into this to try to alleviate this situation, that is the best way to go.
Yeah, as we have begun to now understand how this works. The president makes an address, tells us broadly what to expect, then the ministers come forward and they start presenting the specifics. Do you foresee any changes? And I suppose you know what I'm referring to, the whole issue of the cigarettes and the alcohol. Remember, the president did make an announcement in one of his last addresses that was very much so turned around by the minister in the presidency, and Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. So she wasn't in agreement, or the rest of the committee wasn't, and that did a complete about change. And although he made an announcement last night about the selling of alcohol, not the selling of cigarettes, do you foresee any changes coming?
Well, Leon, the joke in my house is that until Minister Dlamini-Zuma has spoken, you don't know what is happening. You really want to get the gist of this, you have to listen to Minister Dlamini-Zuma. But I think the president was very careful not to come out with mixed messages. He made it very clear yesterday that government ministers will have to take things forward and outline the details. But what I thought was also interesting by the president was to acknowledge the debate that is going on in society around your cigarette, around various measures, restriction measures. The president said that we differ and there is vibrancy of the debate. And I thought that was different from someone who is trying to push away debate, someone who is trying to block debate. So I think if you take the attitude that says that no one has been here before, we are trying to get this done all together, of all of us. In that way, you know, people will actually even say that, look, we understand we cannot get cigarette, but we understand at least we are getting liquor, those who will be enjoying, hopefully. So, and responsibly, and I want to emphasize as well. So I think it's a balancing act. And what I thought was interesting was the tone of the speech. It recognizes the frustration that is caused by this.
Yeah. So let's look as well at another issue of the reopening of schools, because that is a big sticking point as well. I mean, today we're meant to be seeing teachers going back to school to prepare for the opening of grade 7 and 12, which begins next week, Monday, exactly a day today. Importantly, though, the president did say that parents do not have to send their children to school if they feel it's unsafe. So this may be a little bit vague, and many parents are not convinced their children will be safe come Monday next week when grade 7 and matrics resume classes. What's your view on this?
I think that government has to clarify its position here. You cannot come up with a regulation in the middle of this and say to people that some can do it, some cannot do it. The reality, Lian, is that you are going to have some in private schools who can afford to maintain social distancing in some of those schools. They will open, and other in the public schools are not going to open because of the problems there. We have had teachers raising concerns. Some want to interdict the opening of the school. So I think government has to be very clear. They have to prepare the schools in all maximum possible, whatever resources they can put into the schools. And they cannot leave it to volunteerism. You really have to be very clear, draw the line. And because if you don't do that, you are going to result in a situation where the disparity between private education and public education will persist in our society. You are going to have certain schools being able to do and some not being able to continue. So the idea that as government, they are being careful, those who don't want to send their children, then what is the policy response there? You cannot have a policy that is as vague as this. You have to be very clear.
Yeah, and that is a big one. I mean, I know we'll talk further about that, and also threats from unions that if all the protective gear is not in place, they will not be returning to school today. But interestingly, KZN announcing Thursday would be the day for them to come back. Let's quickly move on to another issue. We've got a little bit of time left. So. All of South Africa will be going to level 3. There was talk of different levels within the country, so this was quite interesting to hear last night. Even the hotspots, as they've been described as Cape Town, Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, eThekwini, Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City. Does this surprise you, this new take of opening up the whole country to the same level?
It doesn't surprise me. It is realistic. The idea of a differentiated approach requires a lot of work on the ground. It requires that you have real-time information, real-time data about the rate of infection in those areas. So if your tests, as some reports are coming out, are not coming out timeously, there are some genuine challenges that government is confronted with in relation to this. So it actually says that you might not be able to pursue that strict approach where you are targeting certain areas. But I think that the generalization on the district, to say that certain districts are hotspots and so forth, I think that's the best that you get. I mean, you really need data. You need a good detection system, which we don't have in place at this point. We have to acknowledge that. So we've got to work with the district and to see how people in those targeted districts can be able to be kept safe. And again, what worries me is that those districts that you are talking about, those hotspots, usually they are the hub of economic activities. I mean, they are the metropolitan municipalities where economic activities are supposed to be quite high in those areas. So it means that we are going to have real limitation. It's not over yet. A lot of work needs to be done. Maybe after a week, after the 1st of June, we will start getting a sense of the reality of what it means to operate under level 3.
Yeah.
We might need some further adjustment.
Yeah, I think so. Just finally, the economy, because this is now something that, I mean, this is the real reason that's been given to open up South Africa is to open up the economic activity, because there has been very low and some sectors no economic activity as yet. So with regard to more high-risk businesses such as restaurants and other things, I mean, where you may order and collect food but not eat in, hence waiters can't go back. Nail and hair salons, they are not allowed to open. Also the airline industry, a few domestic flights, that's only for business, not for leisure. I'm not sure if that's going to make a dent for them, in terms of bringing in some money. But in terms of the struggling economy, is this going to help? I mean, let's look at that quickly.
It is a good intention that there is willingness on the side of government to try things out. But the reality is that you don't switch the economy in that way. You cannot function on the basis of just essential. For example, I'll give you a simple example that many cars that will put petrol at the stations will be for non-essential purposes. And what that means is that we are going to start realizing how the economy is interlinked, how some of the things that you can only do at level 2 will make it impossible for some of the business to operate at level 3. So we're learning. We've got to understand the linkages as they reveal themselves in the economy, as we start realizing that we need certain areas to be open with some aspects of the economy. So it is a very complex way. No one has ever been able to command the economy successfully. This is all about gradually trying to get to a point where at some point we will be a functional society. I wouldn't say a normal society. I would say a functional society.
Let's leave it there for now. Ralph, thanks so much. And as we say, we're going to get a lot more information from the respective ministers into their sectors and how it's going to look like under level 3. Political analyst Ralph Mathekga giving us that analysis on some of the points raised by President Cyril Ramaphosa's address last night. That tourism industry, though, is the one that we really need to worry about, because that's still at a dead standstill at this point.